Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War News Update, first part thereof for the 24th of May 2024. There's an awful lot of content to get through, so let's get on with it. We'll start with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video below. 1,240 personnel lost is a very high number, although not as high as we have seen over the last week or so. And I wonder whether that means the Kharkiv counter or the Kharkiv offensive from the Russians is grinding down somewhat. We've seen that they'd kind of halted any further gains in that area, so it could be that's responsible for a slight dip in personnel losses, but that's just speculation. 13 tanks. That's fairly hefty for the Ukrainians to lose. They're consistently losing a large number of tanks every day. 27 armoured personnel vehicles is certainly above average. 42 is over twice the average of artillery systems lost in a single day. 3 multiple launch rocket systems is a high number there. 1 aircraft, another aircraft added to that. So there's been basically 2 Su-25s lost in 2 days for the Russians. That makes it, is it 5 or is it 6 now? I think it might be 6 aircraft lost in the month of May for the Russians. So very bad month for their VKS, for their Air Force. 56 vehicles and fuel tanks lost. Again, pretty high number there, well above average. And 7 pieces of special equipment lost for the Russians. So really considerable numbers lost there. Yeah, as I keep saying, unsustainable. We don't know what the Ukrainians have lost. They have been losing a fair amount of equipment of late. I would refer you now to Andrew Perpetua's loss list, but this just hit me like a ton of bricks last night. I've taken down the vehicle loss spreadsheet and I will probably never post losses again, says Andrew Perpetua. I'm not sure what that's as a result of, whether it's just a lot of work and he's burning out. I know he's really struggling at the moment. I was speaking to him privately, so please don't. I really, it's like I think the most valuable resource I have to refer to. Yes, the general staff figures they're always useful to try and get a sense of the trends, but you can't beat a bit of actual verified information, open source gathered intelligence to help work out what's going on in the war. So he said to me, look, a lot of people are saying I should keep it. You try and convince me, do your best. And so I tried. But if you guys want to, in a really nice way, say how valuable that loss sheet is, please hit him up on Twitter and just try and convince him in as nice a way possible that it's such a useful part of our daily. It's part of our daily routine, I feel now, and I'm kind of lost without it. So yeah, absolutely gutted about that if that is something that's going to stay. So anyway, pretty significant numbers for the Russians out. I was watching reporting from Ukraine's video. Just one tiny bit in there I thought was indicative of what is going on and how deadly this war is for the Russians at the moment. So it's saying, look, 100 meters of tree line, 49 verified Russian dead. Just one small tree line. Just absolutely incredible. And I have seen more and more videos of Russian dead with people walking through like wooded areas, destroyed areas, like these hellscapes, but basically strewn with dead Russian soldiers. And I'm sure you can make a case that you can find similarly for Ukrainian soldiers, but I just haven't come across the sheer volume of videos that there are of Russian dead. So when we see these figures, you're thinking, 1,240. Well, there's just 50 of those in 100 meters, and that front line is over 1,000 kilometers long. So yeah, it's not unreasonable to suggest that the general staff might be, at least at times, in the right ballpark there. Okay, there, as mentioned, another Su-25 was shot down. The 110th Separate Mechanized Brigade took that one down, and there's evidence of it. I think there's a video of 2 of them flying past and then getting shot at, and then there's explosion on the ground. So I presume that is at least somewhat verified. And that's going to be a huge loss. And you can add on to that. I mean, imagine if Andrew Perpetua had that list up, we'd be like, Okay, Su-25, S-400 air defense system. This is the one at Mospina that I mentioned yesterday. There's now video evidence of it. Well, there's video evidence of it on fire on the ground and walking around it. So it's definitely taken out. In fact, we know what components have been lost. And you can also see it from the air. I can't play it to you because I'll get restricted. But this thing goes up, right? It's hit by ATACMS. And that's the end of that one. So strike on air defense position. So on the 22nd at about 12:50, a missile strike was carried out on air defense positions in the area of Mospina airfield in Donetsk region. The strike was carried out by using 5 ATACMS ballistic missiles. This is quite interesting. That's 5 missiles supposedly on this one air defense site. But of course, when you've got all these components, you want to make sure that you take them out so they can't be then put towards another battery that may be short of a launcher or short of a radar or whatever. So that's interesting that many ATACMS were devoted to this one target. It also shows you how valuable this target was. So 2 S-300 or 400 air defense missile launchers were destroyed. 1 air defense missile launcher was damaged. So that's 3 launchers essentially taken out. A 96 L6E radar was destroyed, and a control center of the S-300-400 air defense system was also destroyed. Number of casualties is unknown. And you got video of this on the ground, of looking around at all this stuff. I mean, some of it's still burning. So this is what is claimed to have been taken out. Heavily damaged launcher as well. Likely a 55K6E command post destroyed. Now, here OSINT Technical says with at least 1 ATACMS ballistic missile, a tactical ballistic missile. Others, as you saw, have said 5. Now, what's interesting with OSINT Technical, that if you are interested in these geeky kind of things, it looks like the Ukrainian forces for the first time destroyed a component of the Russian S-350 SAM system. It appears that the S-400 battery was using an upgraded 96, whatever, that's a Cyrillic alphabet, something radar instead of the standard 96 L6E radar. So with that, it is an upgraded radar, so a slightly more valuable strike, I guess. Now, Thomas Tyner, again, he says this sort of stuff quite often. Ukraine is using ATACMS missiles, which were designed to destroy Soviet long-range air defense systems to make the skies safe for fighters like the F-16, and they're using that to destroy Russian long-range air defense systems to make the skies safe for F-16 fighters. I mean, these ATACMS are doing exactly what they were designed for ahead of F-16s coming out. So this really is all about shaping the entire front for the advent of these F-16s. Obviously, it's beneficial anyway not to have air defenses in play, but particularly important when you're introducing a high-value new fighter. I say new inverted commas. It's obviously it's an old fighter really, but it's an upgrade to what the Ukrainians already have, and it's going to be something that Ukrainians are going to have to be very careful with, because as soon as any of those F-16s are shot down, the Russians are going to be opportunistically capitalizing on that. So they need to make sure that the battlefield, the skies are as safe as they possibly can be, and they're definitely doing that. We've got some more footage as well here. This is HIMARS taking out an electronic warfare and the R330 Getel. So if you're going to say, right, Su-25, all the components of that S-300, S-400 air defense system, including that upgraded radar, and you've got this Getel. This Getel itself is worth $200 million, right? It's worth up to $200 million. A fortune has gone up in smoke following a sharp strike. That was when a previous one's been hit. A number of these have been hit. These are really high value targets. So Russia, the Getel complex was taken out, and a military camp was struck together by a HIMARS missile in the Donetsk region. Again, is this a case of continual shaping, or is this just par for the course what they're doing at the moment? Now they've got HIMARS missiles back in good stock. And then there's more. There's just an awful lot seems to have happened the last few days. This is a REB encampment. So REB is the radio electronic warfare. So this is a kind of a unit. So a Shark Shark drone, which is an indigenously manufactured Ukrainian drone for reconnaissance. It's on the hunt again in Donetsk region, therefore the occupants of this REB are no longer residents. A well-aimed shot from HIMARS takes out the Russian electronic warfare station and turns it into rubble. Now, I don't know whether this is the same one or a different one. I haven't had time to verify, but it is, again, using all their capabilities to try and take out, here in this case, is the intelligence complex. So it doesn't mention Jitel. It would have mentioned Jitel if it had been the Jitel one, because that's such high value. But anyway, this is a electronic warfare station, and that whole unit seems to have been, certainly hit with HIMARS. And then we can look at other footage. There's just a lot of footage coming out at the moment. Here's as Dan says, a great film and thread with over 20 geolocated AFV losses, armoured fighting vehicles, so infantry fighting vehicles, APCs and whatnot, mostly Russian. Since the Ukrainian recaptured Bilahorivka in September of 2022, the Russian armed forces' efforts to retake it have been like a slow drip Vuhrdar. So what the idea, so Bilahorivka is just underneath the Serebryansky forest, and it's that place with that chalk pit, and you've got quite a lot of topography to contend with. The Russians have been pushing back there of late, but have been suffering really high casualties. Surat Maps thinks that they've made gains that I don't think are justified with the evidence, and they are taking really heavy losses. And here's more evidence of that. This is coming from Gik, who's actually, the geolocation here is from one of Andrew Perpetua's team. It's like a slow drip Vuhrdar, as in Vuhrdar was a place where the Russians just lost hundreds of bits of kit and didn't get anywhere. And it's kind of the same here. As Gik says, 81st overview of the Russian investment to advance 100 meters into Bilahorivka, utter madness. And then just the geolocation of all of these bits of kit. So, again, you can go and check these out and delight in looking at blown up bits of stuff. But it is, and there's a list of all the stuff there. It is and it's this kind of stuff that then goes into, because Gik's one of the main guys for geolocating and whatnot, that goes into Andrew Perpetua's lost stats, and you would have probably another 20 odd bits of Russian kit to add to that today. So it's such a shame that list hasn't come out today, because there will be an awful lot of stuff on it. So anyway, I thought that was worth knowing about. And then here we have just an OSINT technical reference to the Swedish supplied Archer self-propelled gun, which is a very capable bit of kit, one of the most capable self-propelled guns in the world, if not the most. I mean, its fire rate is brilliant. I presume it's pretty good at acquiring targets as well. I don't know if it's got counter-battery capabilities on board, but OSINT technical here is talking about how the Archer in the Bakhmut area here is proving to be incredibly effective in the counter-battery role, so hitting back at artillery pieces that are firing at Ukrainians. It's seen here hunting down and destroying multiple Russian towed howitzer positions, and that's some geolocations on those as well. They are very useful bits of kit, obviously. Talking recently about how obviously the Ukrainians would like these, but it could be that Caesar might be marginally preferable because it's slightly easier and there might be more spare parts. They seem to be getting more of those in, whereas Archers, I think, are more technically proficient, but when they go wrong, they might be a bit more difficult to sort out. I don't know, it's a bit of speculation, me trying to read between the lines, but anyway, both of them obviously very welcome in Ukraine. Now, talking about drones, not that I was talking about artillery, but drones are super important, obviously, in this war. If you want to see a really good video giving you some details of how the Ukrainians go about doing their drone warfare, check out the Scripps News piece. I think Scripps News work with Bellingcat. They've got anyway, Scripps News have done a really good bit on Darwin's War. So there's this chap Darwin he would now be like a third-year medical student if he wasn't flying first-person view drones into Russian targets. Some fascinating little nuggets in that. I love the ending. Why Darwin? That's his call sign, and it's evolution. It's not about the survival of the strongest, as in, so people get evolution wrong. They don't really understand it. They think survival of the fittest means you have to be the fittest, strongest. It's not. It's like strongest means the most adaptable to an environment, and he's like, no, it's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the strongest, it's the survival of the most adaptable. And it's about adapting to these wartime environments and eking out an advantage over your competitor. You need to outcompete the if you're thinking in terms of predation here, both of you are apex predators, but you need to or you are predator, they are prey. You need to outcompete them. You need to have a competitive advantage over them so that you get your prey, so that you end up existing still and surviving. And I think there's a lovely sort of bit of metaphor in there that I think is really apt. But anyway, there are plenty of nuggets in here. For example, driving to their position, taking 40 drones with them. The idea is that these might be quite an elite bunch, so I don't know whether they get more drones than other units, but also that there's a lot of drones that don't succeed. So there's a couple of times in the video where it's like, yeah, that drone just fell out the sky because of electronic warfare, and we go again. And it's not like you can go but overcome the electronic warfare by adding something to your drone. It's almost like, well, we just got these drones, just got to keep going till one gets through. And that's kind of what they do. And eventually they do take out, I think both times they take out the targets that they're intending to, but it's maybe like third or fourth drone that gets through. So there is this attrition rate, or there is the idea that they're not all successful. In fact, I think, did he say 50% success? And but that's good. That's more than usual. In other words, if you've got 40 drones, it could be that only 15 of them successfully hit their target, and they're the ones you see and you think, oh my goodness, these guys are amazing. They do, and you could be forgiven for thinking every drone they send up is a successful drone attack. But of course, for every drone they send up, there may be like 3 that they've missed with. So all that fall out the sky due to electronic warfare, or run out of battery, or don't detonate, so etc. etc. So it is interesting. He held up a one that's specially for tanks. He's like, these ones don't normally get through the armor of tanks, so we use this one. And instead of, it looked like it was, what was the Bangalore torpedo or something. It looked like it was just instead of having one RPG warhead, they've like taped 3 together or whatever. Just more of the same, just more of the bigger. But yeah, the great video of that. Go and check that out. I talked about Colombians possibly having a very high number, or not very high, but with the list of foreign fighters who have died, Colombians were in the top 5. And I was thinking, wow, that's weird. Why Colombians? Have I got a flag wrong? No, I'm pretty sure that's Colombia. It says Colombia. And some people saying, oh, it could be Romanians or this. No, it's definitely Colombians, and there are a lot of Colombians fighting in Ukraine. In fact, there's a AP, Associated Press article fairly recently from February this year. Ukraine needs more troops fighting Russia. Hardened professionals from Colombia are helping, and the reason why is because they've just got a big army. They're the second biggest army in South America, and they have 10,000 people retiring every year from the army. And then, they've got great experience. They're fighting FARC, the kind of communist rebels in the Colombian rainforest and whatnot. So they've got a lot of expertise, and they don't have a lot of money in retiring. So if they come over and then can get a contract with the Ukrainian army, then it makes sense for them to do so. So with a military of more than 250,000, 10,000 retire a year, hundreds are heading to fight in Ukraine, where they make 4 times as much as experienced non-commissioned officers earn in Colombia, or even more. Colombia has a large army with highly trained personnel, but the pay isn't great when you compare it to other militaries. A lot of them have seemingly ended up in Ukraine at the military hospital, normally treating wounded Ukrainian soldiers. A group of about 50 Colombian fighters spend most of their time staring at their phone screens, calling home, browsing the internet, and listening to music between meals and medical procedures, most for light injuries. So that's just one hospital has 50 Colombian injured. So that's interesting. So it's no surprise then that they figure quite highly in that list of those who have died fighting for Ukraine. In early 2022, authorities said 20,000 people from 52 countries were in Ukraine. A lot of those went back, though. That was a lot early doors. Lots of people went out. They didn't have experience, a lot of them, and they ended up either going back or waiting around for a long time, not getting they thought the right amount of equipment or training, and there was some disillusionment because obviously the war just broken out. They didn't have structures in place to take on huge amounts of international fighters, vet them, train them, and get them ready. And so although a lot started up, I think it probably went down fairly quickly. And now the sorts of people that I get are probably people who have had fighting experience and are going out to help Ukraine, but arguably more of the right kind of people to help. But anyway, a really interesting article there. There's lots of information in this about like wages and Colombians and their experience and whatnot. So well worth looking at that article in the Associated Press. It should be in the description, linked in the description below. Ukraine needs more troops fighting Russia. Hardened professionals from Colombia are helping. And then moving on, we have Atesh, who's a partisan group, saying another underground movement in... Oh, no, not Atesh, is another. So another underground movement in Russia is claiming significant railway attacks. So the group, and they're called Revolutionary Movement, Might is Right, posted a video too, shot in Saratov. And so Saratov is sort of northeast of Ukraine, where the Engels 2 air base is. Anyway, they have posted a video shot in Saratov and threatening the next strikes will be on homes and offices of Russia's military officers. So that's very, very interesting. So that's a public post on Telegram. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Well done. Well done, me. I was not expecting that. I should have thought. Music in my ears. Brain is rattling. Thanks for that. Anyway, so partisan activity is taking place in Russia. I don't know about this. So this is another partisan group in Ukraine claiming many invaders have died in the occupied village of Kardashinka in Kherson. SROK, or Death to Russia's Occupiers and Collaborators, says it gave details of Russian equipment and personnel there to the general staff, and yesterday it was hit, but there's no proof. It's just big smoking explosion in the background here of the shot, but don't know the details of that. Don't know even what's hit it, whether it's missiles, artillery, whatever. But anyway, a partisan group is claiming a high number of deaths, Russian deaths in that strike. Right, moving on to distant strikes now. We're going to start with what happened with the Russians striking Kharkiv yesterday. So about 15 missiles slammed into Kharkiv. They took out a lot of residential areas, commercial properties. It was just terrorist activity. So Kuleba calls for additional Patriots in wake of the heinous attack on Kharkiv. This heinous attack must remind everyone around the world that Ukraine still urgently needs 7 Patriot systems. According to Kuleba, everyone should clearly realise what is at stake. Every day of delay and debate not only costs lives, but also brings the possibility of a larger war in Europe closer, he said. It's terrible, the activities of the Russians with regard to Kharkiv. And some horrible photos coming out. There was a printing press where 7 people died in it being struck. They lost 50,000 books. So a day of mourning's been observed in Kharkiv after Russia's massive attack on the city yesterday. 2 people remain critically ill, 7 others still in hospital, as well as the 7 workers at the printing press who were killed. 50,000 books were also destroyed there. Today, Russia attacked a large printing center in Kharkiv where many Ukrainian publishing houses printed their books. Russia aims to destroy everything Ukrainian. Culture aside, involves the eradication and destruction of cultural artifacts such as books, artworks, and structures. I mean, I don't know whether this was a purposeful attack on the printing press or whether it was random, or whether it was a misfiring missile, inaccurate missile, whatever. But there is this bizarre story to this, or bizarre is probably the wrong word, just really horrible. Can someone wake me up from this nightmare? So a Ukrainian writer keeps a diary and is killed by Russians in a mass killing. His body is found in a mass grave. Another Ukrainian writer finds a diary and helps to get it published and is then killed in a Russian missile attack. And then the printing factory that printed the book is now destroyed by the Russian bombing. And it goes on to complain that US could prevent more killing and destruction today by allowing Ukrainians to strike back at Russians who are shooting at them, but the US does not allow this. Make it make sense for me, please. And actually, so this is the diary of the Ukrainian writer Vakulenko. His body was found in a massive grave in Izium in 2022. The diary was found by Ukrainian writer Victoria Amelina. Now, if you remember, Victoria Amelina was in the pizzeria in Kramatorsk that was struck, and she died, and there was massive outpouring for her. She was a well-respected journalist and writer that many people around the world, she was with some Colombians, actually, oddly enough, at the time in that restaurant. I think they were injured, but they paid her like deepest respects. But she was one that had found this book, then got it to be published, and then she died, and now the printing press has been destroyed. So she died after the shelling of Kramatorsk in 2023. Kharkiv factory that printed this book was destroyed by Russian shelling. Today, it's all horribly sad. But last night there was a massive Ukrainian attack, it appears, on Crimea. But we don't know too many details about it at the moment. So this was from earlier this morning. They write that this is a map with explosions and arrivals from last night. So far, we only know about the arrivals in Gvardeskoye and Semedvore near Alushta. So Alushta is this place that keeps getting the mention at the moment. The smoke is slowly clearing. So goodness me, we could find out throughout the day that there were some significant targets hit. Or the Russians are going to claim that they shot down all the ATACMS. So on the evening of May the 23rd, so last night, Defense Forces of Ukraine struck military facilities in Crimea. Explosions rang out in almost all regions of Crimea. Air defenses tried to work in many areas, but the work turned out to be not very effective. At least 6 MGM-140 ATACMS ballistic missiles hit the communications hub of the radar and anti-aircraft forces of the occupation army of the Russian Federation. So that, again, we talked about 5 ATACMS possibly hitting an S-400 battery, and 6 possibly hitting this place. I think this is the indication from the Americans that actually the Ukrainians do have a lot of ATACMS to use. I have a feeling that the US are just going to give them all their ATACMS that are being phased out, or just a vast amount of them, and they've got a lot of them. And if the Ukrainians can use them like this, that's really good. They're going to do some proper damage, not just like sending a single ATACMS and hoping, fingers crossed those clusters will land in the right place. It's like, well, if we send 6 of these, there's going to be clusters all over the shop. When those 2 air bases were hit back when they were trying out the ATACMS in Berdyansk and Luhansk, it would have been even more effective had they doubled the amount of ATACMS they'd shot, which I think they would do now because they seem to be using a lot of them. Anyway, at the place stands a radio antenna of the Space Observation Station and several buildings of the object. If it was they who were hit, they were high-ranking servicemen of the Russian armed forces at the time, and the main thing is the systematic attacks on the radar and anti-aircraft forces of the Russian armed forces in Crimea. Again, shaping the area, shaping the battlefield. Tim White reported last night large-scale attacks on Crimea. Here's a video of missiles hitting Alushta on the south coast. It's about 20 miles from Yalta. It's from where this is being filmed, and home to the FSB's military unit. So, FSB, KGB iteration. Explosions in Simferopol, Janko, Fardiska. So you can see there, that's 20 miles away, right? Or 20 kilometers away, 20 miles. And Perevalny, where the military coast guard is based. Explosions there in the distance. Alushta, crimes at night, says Atesh, partisan group. At night, a Russian military communications hub was hit. Equipment was significantly damaged and many soldiers were killed. Probably it was also possible to destroy the control points of this center. So a lot of speculation still going on, but the idea is that there could have been some serious damage done last night. Health workers, says Tim White, received urgent messages to go to Alushta. Ambulances recorded going to the main strike, which I've indicated on the map, with a nice big aerial strike as well as the building. Russia claims it's a disused sanatorium between Alushta and Satera, but it looks like it's the radar establishment that was struck there. So that's lots of footage of missiles going up, and not that one. That's a previous explosion that some people are claiming from last night, but wasn't. So video of several 300-kilometer ATACMS missiles launched by Ukraine, striking the Crimean city of Alushta, or settlement located about 250 kilometers from the front line. So good to see, the full 300-kilometer range of these being put to use. Russians did claim to have destroyed 3 ATACMS missiles in Crimea overnight. I don't know what with. They seem to have had most of their air defenses that could take them out themselves taken out by the ATACMS of late. Russian monitors counted over 10 missiles. They also allegedly destroyed 3 maritime drones in the Black Sea, which were heading towards Crimea. Communication center also reportedly hit in Alushta, as mentioned. And then this is what Atesh have subsequently come out and said just now. The Russians began evacuating their military personnel from Jankoy. So that's the airbase and logistics hub in the north of Crimea, and actively restoring airfields in the depths of the peninsula. So really pulling stuff back. We talked about this before, about how they adapted to the 84-kilometer range of the HIMARS, the original missiles that were sent from the HIMARS and similar, and now they're having to move back to 300 kilometers from where Ukraine are able to shoot those missiles. So agents of the Atesh movement from various units of the Russian armed forces report that Russian troops have begun evacuating part of their personnel from Jankoy. At the same time, the restoration and probably modernization of airfields in the depths of Crimea, such as Kirovskoye in the Feodosia region. So if you think about where the Kerch Bridge is on the right-hand side of Crimea, if you just come down the coast a little bit, that's Feodosia, which would be just out the range possibly of the 300-kilometer ATACMS. So again, it's that adaptation. And Bagorovo in the Kerch region, again just out of range, has begun at an active pace. However, despite their best efforts, they will not be able to build enclosed shelters for their aircraft anytime soon. The reason is complex technological processes, high construction costs, and significant time costs. The actions of the occupiers indicate the desire to disperse their troops and equipment in Crimea in anticipation of new successful attacks by the SOE. The Atesh movement in turn continues to record the actions of the occupiers and transmit important information to the Ukrainian liberators. So there you go. Good stuff from the Atesh partisan group there. This is Crimea. Is that, no, that's not the Kerch Bridge. That's, I don't know where that is. That looks like, yeah, that's where. Sure, that's not supposed to be like solid white across there. Anyway, Feodosia should be down here, if that's where I think it is in Crimea, but I don't know, I could be wrong. Maybe this is Kerch just over to the right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was wrong. Yeah, so that's the Arabat Spit coming down there. Sorry, I was being a bit special. Let's use this much larger map. So Feodosia is down here and arguably just out of range of HIMARS sending those 300 kilometers. ATACMS. Then yesterday during the daytime, drones attacked the military unit of the 818th Separate Radio Engineering Center in Krasnodar territory. So if you go, Krasnodar is sort of this area of Russia. If you go across the Kerch Bridge and then get into Russia and then go downwards, that's or across and down, that's Krasnodar. So this morning, May the 23rd, in the village of Gluboki in Krasnodar territory, drones attacked the territory of the military unit 41003. Astra found out a fire broke out after the attack. No injuries were reported, according to open data. This military unit belongs to the 880th Separate Radio Engineering Center. So again, could be more to do with radars and communications and target acquisition, not sure. Better view of the Ukrainian SBU long-range OWUAV, so drone. Attack drone, long range one. I think this is the aeroplane one, essentially, that was seen. Based on the geometry of the vertical stabilizer, this one appears to be based on the A-22 Foxbat, so that small light aircraft that's been turned into a drone, sent into that area. Russian air defenses shot down a Ukrainian drone over Russia's Republic of Tatarstan, so not just Krasnodar, but also Tatarstan, much further to the north and whatnot. On May the 23rd, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed. So there were other attacks that took place into Russia yesterday. Have no idea of the success of those, but as I've said many times, these attacks take place. We don't always know about them, but there's every possibility that the Ukrainians are exacting a cost on the Russians that we're just not aware of many times. Rosneft has asked the Kremlin to compensate for costs of protecting oil refineries from drones. So there are just not enough protection. There's not enough protection for those Russian oil refineries. And those oil companies are having to pick up the cost of protecting them, and they're now appealing to the Russian state to say, hang on, guys, you need to help us militarily protect these sites. CEO of Russia's state-controlled oil company Rosneft sent a letter to Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin asking the Kremlin to approve tax breaks to offset the cost of preventing drone attacks on the company's oil refineries. Russian state-controlled media reported on May the 23rd. Interesting that Gazprom has just been told its taxes are going up. And here Rosneft asking for a tax break. Right, moving on to other bits and pieces. I told you there's lots today. Right, Putin's bunkers. Yes, the information about this is known and constantly updated. One of his call signs is bunker. So you know that we quite often call Putin bunker boy or whatever. He gets that Mickey tape because actually he does spend a lot of time supposedly holed up in his palace in bunkers, and according to the GUR representative of the GUR Andrew Yusov, he's saying that he lets his doubles go on other tasks where it's not so safe. All those times where you see Putin like with people very close to him, like that time he went to Borussia, not Nicosia. What's that place? Buryatia. That was it. He went there, met loads of people. It was all very close physical contact, and people were thinking that's behaviourally very different to the Putin we're used to, that sits at a long table away from everyone else and is very germophobic, and during COVID didn't let people go anywhere near him for 2 years and didn't leave his palace. The bunker Putin. And here's Yusuf saying, well, that's because that's bunker Putin, and you have double Putin, which is what everyone was suspecting anyway. Moving on. It's likely that Valery Gerasimov, Chief of Staff, the Commander-in-Chief, will not hold his position for long. I mean, this is what everyone's been saying. I've been saying this for some time. The scheme of his removal will be identical to that of Shoigu. First, criminal cases against his deputies, which is already happening, and his inner circle, and then honourable retirement. What will happen next, by the way, with Shoigu and Gerasimov is still in question. The Prigozhin case is quite likely, quite in the spirit of Putin. So this is as a result of people getting arrested left, right and centre in the Russian armed forces. So Major General Ivan Popov, Lieutenant General Yuri Kuznetsov, Deputy Defence Minister Timur Ivanov, Lieutenant General Vadim Shamarin, 4 high-profile arrests of the Russian military, respectively Defence Ministry, all charged with corruption and bribery, says Tendar, the German source. Forget about the charges. All Russian generals and officials are guilty of that, even in large quantities. This is not the reason that those men have been detained. Exactly what I've been saying. So everyone's got corruption on their CV, right? So there's compromise on everyone, and it's just, when it's your time, you will be arrested. When you no longer have utility for the Kremlin, you will be arrested, or for the FSB or whoever is behind this. This is not the reason these men have been detained. This is a purge, and the reasons can be attributed that those men have been a severe problem for the Putin regime. Something is cooking again in Moscow. It is obvious that there is a huge power play ongoing. Shoigu's transfer to the Security Council is just another sign that there's a modification of the power structures in Russia that is ongoing. So 4 of them there, and I think you can add another one to that. And a number of Russian Telegram channels and officials are claiming that the commander of the 20th Combined Arms Army, Lieutenant General Sukrab Akhmedov, was dismissed. He was also blamed for the heavy losses sustained in Vuhledar in 2023. So that's another one gone as well. This one more like on the battlefront rather than back in the sort of Ministry of Defence. It's all happening. And again, it's a reflection on things not going well, surely. Jay in Kiev here says, in a candid moment, Russian propaganda chief points out that in this golden era in which the US absolutely refuses to stand up for its allies, Russia must invade as many countries as possible. Again, this is the idea. So if you don't know what the Russians are thinking, listen to them. And they'll tell you. He says, we are seriously and persistently coming to you with our political agenda. Either we will work together or we will see how long you will last. Everything we needed to know about NATO has already become clear. He says, we can fight against any NATO country, almost any. America won't intervene. If America doesn't intervene, then it will be simply a set of card games. Do you know who was appointed? Does everyone know? They also know. I don't know where he's going with that. But it's the idea of like, well, America aren't going to step up, so we might as well just attack people. It'd just be like a game of cards. We can take these people out. It's like, I'm not really sure you'd even win certainly in a conventional land war against Poland, with the state of your land forces at the moment. So the whole of NATO, yeah, I think you're being a little bit over optimistic there. Now, Belarus has also started reshuffling its military departments. Lukashenko has appointed a new chief of general staff, Major General Pavel Muravenko. In Russia, the defense minister was replaced and massive arrest of generals has begun. Russia and Belarus, dependent on it, consolidate around the idea of a long war, change and strengthen the military apparatus. So, yeah, that's happening in Belarus too, it looks. Now, this is pretty incredible. And, this is what freedom looks like in Russia. If you don't like Russia's fake history, there's no reason for you to stay alive. So a professor of Russian State Social University said there were no Stalin repressions. Okay, so he was teaching about Stalin, and Stalin wasn't repressive at all. A student disagreed, and because he disagreed, he was expelled from the Moscow University, and then he was drafted into the army the very next morning. Absolutely incredible. And that shows, A, that it's not a country of freedom. There's no freedom of speech at all. It's a revisionist history. And B, Russia are desperate for troops, which is why they are doing stuff like that. And that's caught on camera there. Just absolutely incredible. Right, a corrector of a Russian missile attack on the Yavoriv training ground in Lviv region has received 15 years in prison. This is something that happens quite a lot. I could report on many, many more of these. I just thought this one was interesting. So he's a 73-year-old native of Lviv, former employee of the KGB in the USSR, cooperated with agents of the FSS of the Russian Federation. Is that FSB? In particular, he sent a map diagram of a military training ground to the enemy. Russians bombarded these objects, firing a total of more than 30 missiles. Then more than 60 people died and more than 160 were injured. Wow. I don't know when that was, whether that's more towards the beginning of the war, when they were striking those bases. There was that international, it wasn't in Lviv, but it was in the west. There was that foreign fighter training base that was hit, and supposedly an awful lot of people were caught in that one. Ukraine's nuclear energy agency, Energoatom, said yesterday that workers had restored the main external power line to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. After earlier warnings, it was disconnected and it was going to go into some kind of verge of blackout. So that's luckily been restored. Russian troops are completely bogged down in street battles for the town of Vovchansk. Ukraine's military intelligence agency confirmed that it was behind a drone attack targeting Russian military facilities in Russia's Tatarstan. So a couple of things there. We talked about that drone attack from the military intelligence agency, but this is the idea as well. So it's the summary of news from Kyiv Independent that the Russians are bogged down in street battles in Vovchansk, and that does seem to be correct. They haven't made the advances through Vovchansk at all. It has been very costly and pretty horrific in Vovchansk by all accounts. Some people are talking about sort of war crimesy butcher. There was that woman in a wheelchair that was shot. It's a horrific story where and that's caught on camera, where her husband was trying to evacuate her and she was shot in the head and she's just left there in a wheelchair. Absolutely horrendous. Ukrainian soldiers in the Kharkiv area woke up to thinking a tank had rolled in. So this is in and around the Kharkiv offensive that's taking place now, and these soldiers in the tree line woke up thinking they were being attacked by a tank, and it's a Ukrainian farmer just going about his business and spraying his field within the range of FPVs. I mean, that takes some balls to do that. My goodness. Just go, I'm just going to go out and spray my fields. Yeah, you do realise there's a war going on, Giles. Yeah. No worries. You got to get these crops sorted. Incredible. And then I'm going to leave you with this. So this girl died yesterday from her injuries sustained in a Russian missile attack. And just a reminder of what war does and how horrible it is. Thanks for watching. Take care. Speak soon.